What if the most surreal places on Earth aren't imagined, but real? A river runs in 5 different colours at once, blooming like liquid paint across the stone. Elsewhere, a lake glows solid pink under the open sky, while a cave ceiling flickers with thousands of living lights like stars trapped underground. These are not paintings, and they are not special effects. They are nature operating at the edge of the imagination, where colour, light and geology collide in ways science is still trying to explain. Join us as we journey through the most breathtaking natural wonders on Earth, where reality looks like a dream. Stretching like a silent white land, Bozhira is the remaining trace of the ancient Tethys Ocean that disappeared millions of years ago. When the seawater dried up, chalk and salt were left behind, covering the ground with a dry white colour like bone. Because the land is so dry and full of salt, almost no plants or life can survive here, leaving only wind moving across the empty ground. The space here is eerily quiet, making anyone standing in the desert feel small and cut off from the world. The weather is also extremely harsh, with the ground heating up to 113 degrees 50 degrees Fahrenheit during the day, but dropping below freezing at night. From that ancient seabed, limestone pillars up to 656 feet high rise like white fangs, showing how nature has worn this land down over time. Appearing like a shocking band of colour deep in the wilderness, Caño Cristales flows across rock more than 1.2 billion years old, with rare shades of red, pink, yellow and green. Because the water has almost no mud or sediment, it becomes clear like a giant lens, magnifying every stone slab and plant vein below. This bright colour palette does not come from minerals, but from a special aquatic plant that clings tightly to the rock. For the colours to fully glow, the river needs direct sunlight. So many parts of the water stay open under the tropical sky instead of being covered by tree shade. Under that strong light, the deep red colour is a biological response from the plant as it creates protective pigments and glows like velvet beneath the water. Beneath that living velvet, swirling currents trap hard pebbles inside rock pockets, slowly turning them into natural drills that form round holes over tens of thousands of years. Although it looks like a white desert, L'Anse Marinensis receives about 47 inches of rain each year, enough to create thousands of lakes between the dunes. The secret lies in a waterproof rock layer beneath the sand, which prevents rainwater from sinking deeper and traps it inside the valleys. The quartz sand helps filter the water, making the lakes so clear that their bottoms can still be seen at a depth of 10 feet. Besides making the water clearer, the white sand reflects much of the sun's radiation, so its surface remains cooler than ordinary desert sand even when the air reaches 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Driven by the wind, the dunes move inland by about 65 feet each year, constantly changing the shape and position of the lakes. When the lakes fill again, fish eggs lying dormant beneath the dry mud begin to hatch, bringing life back to a place that seems to contain only sand and water. After more than 800 years of sleep, Fagradal Sfjall in Iceland did not erupt from a familiar cone-shaped peak, but opened the ground into giant fiery cracks. Before that, more than 50,000 earthquakes shook the area one after another as a sign that magma was moving strongly beneath the underground rock. From those cracks, lava, about 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, flowed slowly across the grey ground, like the hot pulse of the planet exposed on the surface. This. Along with that flow, invisible sulfur gas could settle into low areas, creating toxic pockets that were hard to recognize. When it met the cold air, the magma surface quickly formed a black crust, shrank, and made sharp cracking sounds like breaking glass. The name Faigrada als Fjall suggests a beautiful valley, but after the River of Fire, that beauty was rewritten by a new black basalt layer covering the ground. Instead of the ivory colour of coral sand, Whitehaven Beach spreads out like a smooth strip of white powder beside turquoise water that looks almost unreal. What makes this sand special is that it does not come from coral, but contains up to 98% pure silica, carried in by ocean currents and built up over a very long time. Thanks to the nature of quartz, the sand surface does not hold much heat. So even when the weather reaches 104 degrees Fahrenheit, bare feet can still walk across it quite comfortably. When the tide shifts, blue water slips through the white sandbanks, constantly creating a natural mosaic that changes with each wave. The calm water here is so clear that light can pass down about 33 feet, making the shadows of boats sometimes look as if they are floating in the air. On dry patches of sand, each step can also create a soft squeaking sound as if the beach itself is singing, making Whitehaven Beach feel even more like a wonder too beautiful to believe. Like a giant red crack tearing across the plain, Charon Canyon is a 12-million-year-old canyon that can turn wild beauty into a test of endurance. When you step into this dry world, the narrow cliffs squeeze the space inward, making people feel as if they are being swallowed inside a massive stone maze. That feeling becomes heavier when swirling wind screams through the rock cracks, creating echoing howls that remind you how small you are in harsh nature. The violent contrast exists inside the same canyon, where the cliff edge can reach 113 degrees Fahrenheit, while a cold river around 50 to 54 degrees Fahrenheit rushes through the bottom. This narrow basin structure traps the midday heat like a natural furnace, making the body lose water much faster than expected. Even stranger, strong winds blow upward from the canyon floor toward the cliffs, sometimes lifting dust and small rocks into the air as if gravity has been reversed. Set between dark green forest and the rolling ocean, Lake Hillier looks like a spilled bucket of bubblegum paint, with pink water that almost never fades. This thick solution has a salinity of about 34%, equal to about 45 ounces of salt per gallon, almost 10 times saltier than normal seawater. That same amount of salt leaves the shore without soft sand, surrounding the lake with sharp white salt crystals like a cold ring of snow, holding the bright pink water inside. That surreal pink colour is not magic, but comes from algae and ancient bacteria that create pigment to protect themselves from extreme salt and ultraviolet light. Unlike many pink lakes that change colour with the seasons, this water still keeps its clear pink shade even when it is scooped into a transparent glass. Because of that extreme salinity, Lake Hillier's water is so dense that, in theory, a human body would float on the surface like a cork. Sticking out from the cliff like a stone edge left behind in the sky, Trolltunga in Norway hangs at about 2,297 feet above the deep blue glacial lake below. This strange rock ledge is a mark of ancient ice formed when water entered cracks, froze, expanded, and separated the rock from the mountainside. Below that height, the lake lies flat like a mirror between two upright grey cliffs, making depth and height seem to blend together. The surface of the rock is rough, cold, and full of small cracks, where thin yellow moss clings tightly to the grey stone. In the open space, the wind rushing through the cracks is sometimes the only sound, making the silence around the cliff feel even deeper. From an outside angle, photos make Trolltunga look like a thin board hanging in the sky, although the rock is actually wider than it seems and slopes gently upward like a natural grandstand. Glowing white on the hillside, like a cotton waterfall turned to stone, Pamukkale in Turkey spreads rows of turquoise hot pools across curving travertine steps. From a distance, those white steps look like soft snow or fluffy cotton, but when touched, they feel solid, while steam from 95 to 212 degrees Fahrenheit rises in a mist. Over millions of years, underground springs rich in calcium carbonate reached the surface, lost carbon dioxide, and left behind white minerals that slowly hardened. From mineral layers deposited over time, nature built countless uneven pool edges like a white structure growing layer by layer. Layer. At the bottom of the shallow pools, soft mineral sediment covers the stone surface like white, calcium-rich mud, showing that the mountain is still quietly creating new material. When the sun sets, the stepped pools turn into water mirrors, pulling red, orange, and purple light across the entire white hillside. Rising straight from the blue sea, the Five Fee Islands in Thailand display limestone cliffs hundreds of feet high, standing almost vertically at about 90 degrees above the ocean. On the bare grey rock walls, tropical tree roots still creep into narrow cracks, holding tight and growing as if life were rising directly out of cold stone. Slipping through narrow rock passages, many saltwater inlets appear almost enclosed in a full circle, making the sound of the open sea gradually fade away. The colour of the sea here does not change slowly, because just beyond an underwater rock ledge, bright turquoise water can suddenly turn dark blue, revealing an unexpected depth below. Under sunlight, The white limestone sand reflects through the crystal clear water, creating an illusion that makes wooden boats look as if they are floating in mid-air. When you dive deeper, the boundary between the warm water above and the colder water below forms a shimmering, blurred layer, making the ocean look as if it is bending. Red Beach makes people forget the usual image of blue water and white sand because all they see is a bright red wetland that looks like the ground is on fire. What makes this scene even more precious is that the red colour is at its brightest for only about 30 days in autumn before it slowly fades with the weather. When the tide rises and falls and the wind moves across it, the grass does not stay still, but forms wave-like lines that make the ground look like a moving sea of fire. The size of this Red Sea is also huge, spreading across more than 50 square miles, equal to about 18,000 soccer fields put together. That deep red colour actually comes from a survival mechanism, as the salt-tolerant grass creates red pigment to protect itself from the harsh, salty mud. From above, dark blue water channels cut through the red field, creating an image like veins running through a giant piece of land. Sipoholan looks like a patch of white snow that somehow fell into Indonesia's tropical rainforest, but what rises from it is hot steam from the ground. From the cracks, the water can reach 158 degrees Fahrenheit. So the pools are always covered with white steam and a strong sulphur smell. That bright white layer is not ice, but travertine stone formed when mineral water leaves calcium carbonate on the surface after cooling down. Over thousands of years, those minerals stacked layer by layer, naturally forming half-moon soaking pools like stone terraces. This clash of white stone, turquoise water and deep green forest makes the place feel like winter and the humid tropics at the same time. The strangest part is that this landscape was not carved by people, but slowly built by hot water itself, one mineral layer at a time. Tricking the eye above a calm sea surface, the underwater waterfall in Mauritius creates the illusion of a giant waterfall dropping into a dark blue abyss. Long white streaks of sand stretch toward the edge, making the sea look as if it is being pulled down by an invisible force, even though everything seems calm from a boat. Only from above does the scene become clear like a turquoise painting, where bright shallow water, white sand, and a deep dark blue strip connect together. Although it looks like a powerful waterfall, the place below is completely silent, with no roaring water or flying foam, only sand and sediment quietly sliding into the deep. The shallow water is only about 26 to 492 feet deep, but near the edge of the illusion, the seafloor suddenly drops more than 13,120 feet. The angle of sunlight, the color of the sand, the clarity of the water, and the underwater terrain make this wonder a fragile optical illusion that appears fully only from the sky. Completely breaking the usual dry image of the desert, Kaiserkup appears like a giant tiramisu cake left behind on the plains of Kazakhstan. In the past, its bright red colour once looked like a lighthouse on land, helping ancient merchant caravans find their way across the dusty plain. That red colour was actually created when iron-rich clay layers were exposed to air and slowly rusted, making the ground look as if it was bleeding. Alongside the red, the whole mountain range also shows orange, chocolate brown, and chalk white stripes stacked like a giant geological barcode. Even more frightening, the white stripe that looks like cake cream is actually an ancient grave bearing the shells of countless microorganisms that lived on the seafloor millions of years ago. Although it looks solid, just one passing rain can turn the ground into dangerous sticky mud, strong enough to trap any off-road vehicle. In Kakaban, the fear of being stung by jellyfish almost disappears because you can drift among millions of soft jelly bodies without feeling that burning pain. To enter this fragile world, people must walk on wooden bridges suspended through the forest without driving concrete piles into the swampy ground. Just below the calm surface, Cassiopeia jellyfish lie upside down on the lake bottom, lifting their bodies toward the light so their symbiotic algae can photosynthesize. The name Kakaban means hug, much like the ring of dense forest wrapping around the closed lake, which covers about 2 square miles. Because it has been separated from the ocean for so long, the lake's ecosystem has become unusual, causing both the jellyfish and the mangrove roots to develop in their own way. Beneath the clear water, the roots are covered with sponges and sea anemones, while golden orange jelly bodies drift slowly like an underwater galaxy. Huko waterfall does not impress people with clear blue water, but with a muddy yellow flow rolling down like a whole mass of sand and mud falling before your eyes. When the water crashes into the deep gorge, yellow spray rises high and sometimes forms rainbows around the Demon Rock, which always stands above the current. Especially during the flood season, every 35 cubic feet of water can carry up to 1,102 pounds of mud and sand, making the whole waterfall look heavier and thicker than a normal waterfall. The water becomes even more powerful when a river, about 984 feet wide, is suddenly squeezed down to only 66 to 98 feet, like the mouth of a giant teapot. In winter, that water freezes into tens of thousands of white ice needles, hanging across the cliff walls in a cold and quiet scene. This strong change makes Huku a very unusual wonder and also the largest natural yellow waterfall in the world. Glowing like a blue Milky Way hidden beneath the ground, Waitomo Cave is home to tens of thousands of glowing larvae attached to the stone ceiling. Behind this light lies an entire life cycle spent inside the cold earth, where these creatures never see the sunlight outside. Below them, boats drift slowly along an underground river, while the dark water reflects the glowing ceiling and makes visitors feel as if they are floating beneath a starry sky. But this peaceful scene is actually a hunting system, because the larvae glow more brightly when food is scarce, attracting insects toward them. From each point of light, dozens of silk threads, nearly 20 inches long, hang like crystal curtains, ready to trap passing prey. Sticky drops containing a paralysing substance cover the threads, quickly disabling the prey before it is pulled upward and eaten. In Khao Sok, limestone towers rising up to 3,150 feet trap moisture from the forest, forming a white layer of mist floating between the cliffs. Right beneath that mist is an emerald lake, where floating wooden cabins have to rise and fall with water levels that can change by up to 98 feet between seasons. On clear days, sunlight passes through the water near the lake surface, creating bright beams below and stretching the shadows of wooden boats into long lines. But under that quiet water, many ancient tree trunks still stand in parts of the lake that reach up to 260 feet deep, like traces of an old forest covered by water. Leaving the lake and stepping into the forest, the thick canopy blocks up to 95% of sunlight, making the ground dark and damp, even in the middle of the day. Deeper inside the caves, stalactites and twisting gypsum crystals open up a strange underground world where stone still slowly grows in the dark. Thousands of white streams fall together from the cliff as Tumpak Sewu in Indonesia spreads into a giant arc beneath the shadow of an active volcano. What makes this waterfall unusual is that the water does not fall from one single river, but pours out through countless cracks across a cliff hundreds of feet wide. When the water falls about 394 feet into the kitchen floor, the force of impact turns it into a cold mist that almost always covers the space below. That moisture feeds ferns and green moss growing thickly on the grey rock surfaces, making the cliff look like a living wall. All inside the narrow canyon, the sound of water striking rock echoes powerfully, making human voices almost disappear into the waterfall. As the light leaves the canyon floor early, Tumpak Sewu keeps a strange, wild beauty, like a world of water opened between stone, forest, and mist. Cutting through the night with bright neon blue flames, Kawa Ijen appears like a surreal chemical stage opening inside a volcanic crater. That strange light is not lava, but sulfur gas heated to about 1,112 degrees Fahrenheit, rising through cracks and catching fire when it touches the cold air. The entire basin is often covered by thick white clouds of sulfur dioxide, turning the space into a giant and suffocating chemical laboratory of Earth. Near the crater rim, tropical vegetation almost disappears, leaving only black twisted tree trunks hit by acid vapor and sulfur gas rising from the basin. Lying still near the blue fire is the largest acid lake on the planet, hiding its power to corrode metal beneath a calm turquoise surface. At the crater floor, silence almost disappears under bubbling acid gas hissing through cracks and dry sounds echoing among the sulfur rocks. Standing out on the thick turquoise water of the Dead Sea Tree appears like a lonely green sprout in water, where almost no living thing can survive. Its presence does not come completely from nature, but from an art installation fed by a layer of rich soil hidden beneath the salt island. To keep this fragile life alive, the artist has to use a paddleboard to bring fresh water out and water the tree every day. The tree grows on a white crystal salt base, where constant evaporation makes salt cling around its roots like a fossil shell. The surrounding water has a salinity of about 34.2%, turning this place into a thick mineral solution where plants almost cannot live naturally. With a density of about 10.3 pounds per gallon, the water here is so thick that if the tree were pulled out, its roots would float on the surface like a foam buoy. As if challenging every familiar law of nature, horizontal falls does not drop from above, but roars sideways across the sea like a giant water machine. This phenomenon begins when the moon's gravity pulls the tide upward, then forces a massive body of water into extremely narrow sandstone gaps. Because the water cannot escape through the gap fast enough, the levels on both sides are pushed far apart, creating violent pressure on the same ocean's surface. When that pressure bursts out, millions of tons of water are forced through the tight opening, breaking the calm sea into surging white whirlpools. That boiling turquoise current is trapped between rusty red sandstone walls, rock shaped by sun, wind and sea salt for nearly 2 billion years. Even more frightening, whenever the tide changes direction, the entire waterfall turns 180 degrees, making the ocean look as if it is being sucked into a bottomless black hole. Like a colour-changing mirage in the desert, Lake Retba shifts from pale pink to deep red, while salt levels reaching 40% allow anyone entering the water to float without effort. Despite its wide surface, the deepest point is only about 10 feet, while the thick water is almost empty of birds, fish, and insects. In this silent landscape, workers stand in the water, use long poles to break the hard salt layer below, and shovel it into their boats. Wooden boats without engines then carry the salt crystals ashore, where they are arranged in long white rows beside the pink water and golden dunes. Before entering the lake, the workers must cover their skin with a thick layer of natural butter to reduce the burning and corrosive effects of the salty water. For visitors, this is an unbelievable natural wonder. But for the workers, every load of salt comes at the cost of their health. Shaped like a stone T-Rex bending down to drink from the sea, Kelingking Beach in Indonesia reveals a limestone cliff about 650 feet high, with a green spine stretching out toward the ocean. That unbelievable shape was created by millions of years of sea wind, strong waves, and erosion, carving the limestone and soft sandstone. From above, the white beach below looks like a small strip of silk, caught between silver grey cliffs and water that suddenly changes colour. Within only a few yards of water, the bright turquoise near the shore quickly turns deep blue, revealing the hidden depth and power beneath the ocean's clear surface. The crescent-shaped beach is enclosed by steep limestone walls, making anyone standing below feel as if they are at the bottom of a giant stone well. The enclosed bay also amplifies the sound of waves crashing against the shore, making Kelingking Beach feel both stunning and beautiful, yet wild and overwhelming. White earth, black trees, red dunes, and blue sky meet at Dead Vlei, creating a surreal landscape that seems to belong to another planet. Surrounding this silent land are iron-rich dunes that glow red-orange and rise from 984 to 1,312 feet. Between these walls of sand lies a cracked clay pan, formed when an ancient river flooded the area and then evaporated, leaving bright salt and minerals behind. Chum. Across this surface, acacia trees that died around 900 years ago still have not rotted because the desert air is extremely dry. Conditions become even harsher as temperatures fall to 32 degrees Fahrenheit at night before rising to 122 degrees Fahrenheit at midday. The same climate that once killed the trees has preserved their dark trunks, making dead Vlae appear frozen outside the flow of time. Glowing in the grey desert, Dachaidan, Emerald Lake spreads into a chain of emerald pools where salty water and minerals dye the dry ground with unbelievable colours. From above, narrow dirt roads cut across the white salt crust, dividing the lake surface into a sharp mineral matrix. Around the still water, salt crystallizes into a hard white shell, turning each pool into a giant mirror that reflects the sky. Behind that calm surface, many pools were once old mining pits, now filled with groundwater and melted snow, letting industrial traces blend with salt, minerals, and light. Beneath the clear water, clusters of crystallized salt appear on the lake bed, forming cold white patches inside the bright mineral water. Cloud cover quickly softens the neon colour palette, revealing the grey mineral mud below and showing how strongly this surreal beauty depends on light. Hidden deep underground, Sundung is a natural wonder between 2 and 5 million years old, large enough to hold green forests and clouds inside its enormous chambers. Its unbelievable size creates a weather system of its own, causing water vapour to condense into mist that slowly drifts through the darkness. Beneath these underground clouds, a turquoise river flows through the cave and can rise more than 33 feet during the rainy season, continuing to carve the limestone walls. Over millions of years, mineral deposits have formed stalagmites between 230 and 262 feet high, along with cave pearls almost as large as baseballs. The rock walls also contain fossils of coral and marine creatures dating back 300 million years, showing that this area once lay beneath an ancient ocean. In the isolated darkness, some creatures have adapted with nearly transparent bodies and eyes that have almost disappeared, creating one of the most unusual ecosystems on Earth. Like a giant prism eye turned toward the sky, Grand Prismatic Spring spreads bands of spectral colour across the steaming ground. Every minute, heat from the supervolcano below pushes about 555 gallons of hot water to the surface, keeping the spring in constant motion. In the central zone, the temperature reaches 189 degrees Fahrenheit and supports almost no life, while the blue colour appears as the water absorbs red light and reflects blue light. As the water flows outward and cools, each temperature zone allows heat-loving bacteria to grow into mats of yellow, orange, and red. Above the surface, rising steam continuously reflects the colours of the spring, forming a rainbow mist that hangs in the cold air. Because of that, the spring's bright beauty hides a striking paradox. Those vivid bands form around water so hot that most life cannot survive there. Stretching like a giant blood pool across the desolate plateau, Laguna Colorada looks like a dark red fragment fallen from a dead planet. Along the shore, every step on the dry salt and sediment crust makes a sharp, crumbling sound, creepy, like stepping on countless broken bone fragments. Although the water is full of red microalgae and harsh minerals, flocks of flamingos still survive by filtering food from the lake, slowly dyeing their pale grey feathers into a bright pink colour. From far away, the Red Lake, covering about 14,800 acres, can create the illusion of a blood ocean, but its average depth is only about 1 to 3 feet. Sitting at an altitude of 13,700 feet, the thin air here makes every breath heavier, turning the beauty in front of you into a harsh, physical challenge. That gloomy red colour once made ancient tribes believe the lake was the remains of a bloody battlefield between demons. Like a fairy tale tunnel growing out of an old railway, the tunnel of love is where nature slowly swallowed a rough structure and turned it into a closed green tube. That beauty has made this place a romantic symbol, where many couples believe their sincere wish will come true if they walk through it hand in hand. But behind that dreamy scene is a more surprising story, because this tree corridor was once linked to hiding military trains during the Cold War. The perfect curved arch today was not made by gardeners, but by timber trains brushing against the branches every day and accidentally trimming them for many years. Through the seasons, the tunnel changes from an emerald green corridor in summer to burning orange and red when autumn arrives, making the whole scene feel as if it is changing clothes. But if the trains stop running, the forest will quickly close in, choke the railway, and erase this wonder within only about 2 to 3 years. Like a white cut carved between a barren desert and the rolling ocean, the Great Australian Bight reveals one of the fiercest natural borders on Earth. This giant cliff mass was once part of an ancient seafloor, then was lifted up and exposed as a towering limestone wall above the water. Over millions of years, water power has kept carving into the foot of the limestone, leaving this majestic coastline slowly shaped by the ocean. Yet beneath those powerful waves is a rare ecological world where more than 85% of marine life is endemic and large whales come to breed. Deep inside caves near the cliffs, this place also preserves fossils of giant marsupials that lived here tens of thousands of years ago. Step back about 164 feet and you hear the silence of the plain, but near the cliff edge, the roar of the sea makes this place feel almost too strange to be real. Rising above many lifeless wonders, the Great Barrier Reef is a giant biological superstructure and one of the rare living things that can be recognized from outer space. Although it covers only a very small part of the ocean, this place supports more than 25% of known marine species. But from above, the water appears like a giant mosaic, where bright turquoise bands, deep blue areas, and coral shadows keep weaving together. Beneath that beauty is a dense coral maze that has caused more than 1,600 ships to run aground or sink throughout maritime history. Yet this living wonder is also fragile because a heat rise of only about 3 degrees Fahrenheit can make many reefs bleach and weaken quickly. Even so, when night falls, this ocean city wakes up with millions of tentacles hunting plankton, and once a year covers the water with a magical pink spawning storm. Looking as if they had been pulled from the ground and planted upside down, the avenue of the baobabs in Madagascar stands along the red dirt road like giant tree gods guarding the sky. Their fibrous trunks, with little value for building wood, accidentally helped these ancient trees survive many waves of human clearing. Beneath the giant outer bark, each trunk is hollow and sponge-like, able to store more than 31,700 gallons of water to survive 9 dry months. Reaching up to 98 feet high and living for more than 800 years, they now stand alone among grassland, like the remains of a forest that once covered this land. After sunset, baobabs quietly open large flowers with a fermented smell, attracting bats to drink nectar and carry pollen far away. Before darkness takes over, the red sunset stretches their shadows across the dusty ground, making the Baobab Row look like the last living memory of a lost forest. On the dark grey edge of the sea, Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland opens into more than 40,000 tightly fitted hexagonal basalt columns, like a stone road that Earth itself has paved toward the ocean. This almost man-made geometric masterpiece began about 60 million years ago when lava hotter than 1,832 degrees Fahrenheit slowly cooled, shrank, and cracked into straight-edged blocks. Most of the columns have six sharp sides standing close together like a stone honeycomb or machine-cut puzzle pieces. From above, their uneven heights make them look like a broken stone keyboard, then gradually drop into black steps, sinking beneath the cold sea. On days of thick fog, the horizon almost disappears, while the stone columns appear and vanish inside the salty mist. When the fog pulls back, many stone bodies reveal horizontal cracks with red mineral streaks caused by iron oxidation, making the basalt surface look far more alive than ordinary rock. Rising in the harsh North Atlantic Sea, Fossa looks like a white crack tearing from the gloomy sky down to the dark rock below. The strangest thing happens on stormy days when strong wind blows the falling water back into the air, creating a reverse rain, as if gravity has been bent. From far away, the giant white strip of water once looked like a natural landmark, helping ancient sailors find their way through thick fog. Dropping from about 459 feet, the waterfall is squeezed between smooth black basalt cliffs, creating a strong contrast between bright water and dark stone. Because the cliff breaks into two levels, the water mass must crash into the middle rock shelf, burst apart, and then fall again to the lower tier. When winter arrives, the water freezes into many sharp ice points, hanging on the cliff like monster teeth in the cold sky. Bledug Kuwu looks like a living crack in the ground, where grey mud keeps swelling and bursting instead of erupting with red molten rock like a typical volcano. The source of this phenomenon lies in methane gas pockets, trapped more than 6,562 feet underground, constantly pushing liquid mud and ancient seawater up to the surface. When the pressure reaches its peak, the soft mud stretches into giant round forms, then bursts open into jets of grey mud. Even before the sound becomes clear, people standing nearby can already feel short vibrations moving through the thick mud beneath their feet. This non-stop rise of salty mud and underground gas makes it almost impossible for plants to survive, leaving behind a dry, cracked, pale field. But in that harsh place, local people still use large bamboo troughs to dry the muddy water, filtering out pure grains of salt through many generations. Hidden deep inside the lush jungle, Lake Agco appears like a geothermal reactor where the heat of an underground volcano escapes straight to the surface. The space around the lake feels almost never peaceful, with only the hiss of steam and the bubbling of boiling mud sounding like the breath of a giant creature. When that rising heat meets the cold air, a thick white fog covers the lake's surface. Making the scene look gloomy like a doorway into the earth. Beneath that mist is a mud core boiling at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, a deadly trap that can cause severe burns if any creature slips in. In sharp contrast to the hot cauldron underfoot, the air around it at about 4,000 feet high is freezing cold, forcing the body to face two extreme temperatures at once. Even stranger, heat-loving bacteria can still survive in that boiling environment, showing the incredible strength of life on Earth. Can you believe Chaka Salt Lake can make the ground seem to disappear, making every step look like you are walking among the clouds? Beneath that endless white surface lies about 448 million tonnes of natural salt, turning this place into a giant salt storehouse on the plateau. Few people would expect that this white surface was once the bottom of an ancient ocean, now sitting more than 10,170 feet above sea level. Spreading across about 41 square miles, equal to more than 14,000 soccer fields, the lake creates a huge white space with almost no visible end. This special reflection comes from a very clear and very shallow layer of water resting quietly on the hard, salt surface below. Because this water is only about 1 inch deep, the horizon almost disappears, making the whole space look as if the sky and the ground are connected. On Japan's cold northern island, Noboribetsu Hell Valley still lets white smoke and heat rise from a volcanic basin about 24 acres wide. Deep beneath the valley, the heat left behind after an old explosive eruption still pumps nearly 800 gallons of mineral water every minute, keeping the whole area constantly active. As the hot water passes through strong sulfur and mineral layers, some streams here become highly acidic, strong enough to corrode metal in a short time. Because of that, when visitors walk along the wooden paths, they not only see white steam rising from cracks, but also hear hissing gas and boiling water bubbling right beneath their feet. At night, yellow lights shine into the columns of steam, making the whole valley look misty, like a geothermal stage that never stops working. In winter, white snow quickly melts on the hot ground, revealing a strange contrast between the grey, steaming land and the deep green forest around it. Like a piece of tropical forest lifted out of the sea, Raja Ampat in Indonesia reveals thousands of green-covered limestone rocks rising from water as clear as glass. The strange shapes of these cliffs are marks left by millions of years of wave erosion, making many karst rocks look like giant stone mushrooms. Around the bases of the rocks, the water creates a colour illusion as emerald green. Near the shore quickly turns into deep indigo blue. Beneath the sea surface, the terrain folds into underwater canyons, steep walls and dark caves where neon coral grows thick like a living biological city. city. One of the strangest details here is that some small shark species can use their fins to crawl across the coral floor while hunting at night. Behind the calm surface, ocean currents quietly carry life through each coral reef, making Raja Ampat feel like a green body breathing beneath the sea. When white clouds swallow the valley floor, Zhangjiajie turns more than 3,000 quartz sandstone pillars into a stone forest hanging in the sky. Clinging to dry and almost vertical cliffs, the roots of countless old pine trees still reach deep into cracks, twisting tightly as they continue to grow. Unlike mountain ranges that stretch sideways, this landscape forces the eye upward, making anyone standing below feel small inside a maze of sky-high stone walls. These ancient rock layers, about 380 million years old, were shaped by rain, wind, and flowing water, creating tightly packed stone pillars unlike ordinary mountains. Over time, erosion keeps wearing away the pillar bases, making many huge rock masses look as if they are balancing on narrow necks. In winter, snow covers the stone pillars, mist and pine branches, turning the whole grey sandstone forest into a silent, freezing and unbelievable scene. Kawaputi does not welcome you with the calm beauty of a mountain lake, but with a glowing acid surface rolling with sulfur smoke inside a volcanic crater. That water never keeps one colour because minerals, sunlight and sulfur reactions can shift it from milky white to turquoise like a natural illusion machine. Toxic gas and its acidic soil make the trees along the shore dry out, leaving thin black trunks standing in sharp contrast to the bright water. Around the lake, pale volcanic mud and ash cover the shore with a cold white shade that looks like fake snow in the tropics. But that cold feeling is not just an illusion because the altitude can make the air near the lake drop to about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, even though it sits close to the equator. So even though Kawaputsi looks like a scene from another planet, visitors should usually stay for only about 15 minutes because the thick sulfur gas can quickly become dangerous for breathing. The Bangai Islands stun you from the surface of the water, where wooden boats look as if they are floating in the air instead of resting on the sea. That illusion appears when sunlight passes through water with almost no cloudiness, letting the boat's shadow fall straight onto the sandy bottom. The strange part is that this clarity continues deep into the rainforest, where blue lakes sit hidden among layers of tropical trees. The secret lies in the porous cast limestone foundation, which works like a natural filter that holds back mud, dirt, and sediment before the water rises into the lake. Because of that, people can clearly see ancient tree roots that have stayed underwater for many decades without rotting like a fossil forest beneath the water. But beneath that transparency, the shallow coral reefs offshore suddenly break into dark, deep walls, where strong ocean currents feed an entire bright city of marine life. Falling into the Great Rainforest like a long silver ribbon, Angel Falls holds the record as the tallest free-falling waterfall in the world with a height of 3,281 feet. The waterfall does not drop from an ordinary, sharp mountain peak, but falls from the almost 90-degree sandstone wall of a tabletop mountain isolated for millions of years. Although it has an enormous height, the sound at the bottom is no longer a violent roar, but softens into a cold murmur inside the thick mist. Because a huge amount of water vapor floats around the cliff, sunlight can create full circle rainbows, making the scene look like a doorway of light in the air. On the constantly wet cliff, leaking cracks become places where moss and ferns cling to the stone, forming quiet green patches hanging between rock and mist. The dry season pulls water away from the tabletop mountain, making Angel Falls thin into a light curtain of water, while the giant cliff appears more clearly behind the mist. Set within thorny savanna, Vale de Lua appears as a silver-grey field of pitted rock, looking like a piece of the moon that has fallen onto Earth. This surreal structure was created by water carrying sand and gravel, slowly wearing down and carving into the hard rock over millions of years. From those deeply carved channels, the water does not roar like a large waterfall, but softly hisses, slips into underground caves, and echoes back as a gurgling sound beneath the rock. Across that naturally smooth surface, clouds Oedipus amorphous, quartz crystals reflect the midday sunlight, turning the whole valley into a blinding bright zone. Flowing through that stone maze, the crystal clear water creates a strange visual illusion, making holes about 16 feet deep look as if they are covered by only a thin layer of water. Surrounded for centuries by dense shrubs, Valle de Lua feels even more like a secret stone valley carefully hidden from the outside world by nature. Beneath the clear blue water, the marble caves in Chile appear like a smooth stone maze where white-grey arches curve around the light. More than 6,000 years of cold waves have patiently worn into the rock walls, carving arches, stone pillars, and soft curved passages. The meltwater is so clear that people can see about 98 to 131 feet deep, revealing the submerged rock below. Sunlight reflects onto rock made of nearly 95% calcium carbonate, making the whole surface glow with a strange, fluorescent blue illusion. Within that layer of light, reflections make the giant marble blocks look weightless, as if they are floating above a cold mirror of water. The smooth, curved marble surface amplifies the sound of waves and wind, letting the echoes roll through the arches like a cold song of nature. Covering more than 3,861 square miles, Sala de Uyuni stretches like an endless white salt ocean where the line between the ground and sky nearly disappears. Located about 11,995 feet above sea level, this vast desert has thin air and lies in almost complete isolation. Its immense emptiness becomes even more striking because the elevation changes by only about 3 feet, causing the eyes to lose their point of reference and making distance difficult to judge. During the dry season, the water evaporates and reveals millions of hard salt hexagons locked together in a white crust stretching to the horizon. But when the rainy season arrives, a thin layer of water between 1 and 2 inches deep covers the ground, turning the entire landscape into a giant mirror reflecting the sky. On clear nights, the stars appear directly beneath your feet, creating the overwhelming feeling of floating in an endless void. Almost unknown to the outside world until 1975, Juzhaigu Valley reveals colour-changing lakes surrounded by ancient forests and snow-covered mountains. In autumn, the trees turn yellow, orange and red, then reflect across the jade-coloured lakes to create a landscape that looks almost unreal. On dead trunks lying across the water, moss, grass, and wildflowers grow over calcium deposits, forming small floating bonsai islands filled with new life. Even at a depth of 131 feet, the lakebed appears as if it were beneath a sheet of green glass, with every stone visible in remarkable detail. In water ranging from 41 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, many fallen ancient trees remain motionless for centuries, preserved almost perfectly beneath layers of calcium. On windless days, the lakes become perfect mirrors, reflecting snowy mountains and forests so clearly that it is difficult to tell the real landscape from its image beneath the water. In the middle of the dry desert, the wave looks like an ocean rising in motion before suddenly turning to stone. Despite its solid appearance, many sandstone ridges are so thin that one misplaced step could break them forever. Under the intense summer sun, the deep rock basins trap heat, causing the surface to reach about 120 degrees Fahrenheit. At midday, the shadows almost disappear and make the landscape look flat. But at sunrise and sunset, the orange bands glow like fire while their lines seem to crawl across the rock. Surrounding this strange scene is an almost completely barren land with hardly any grass, bushes, or patches of green, only stones stretching toward the horizon. Even more dangerously, the dry channels can suddenly become paths for flash floods beneath a clear sky simply because heavy rain has fallen dozens of miles away. Rising above a sea of clouds, Mount Roraima is a 2 billion-year-old sandstone formation with a tabletop summit and cliffs more than 1,312 feet high. Despite looking flat from a distance, the 12 square mile plateau is actually a maze of cracked black rock surrounded by valleys filled with quartz. With up to 157 inches of rain each year, water gathers on the summit and spill over the edges, creating dozens of waterfalls that disappear into the mist. These heavy rains also wash away most nutrients, forcing many plants to evolve into insect-eating species. Long isolation has also allowed a tiny black toad to survive here, using the unusual defense of curling into a ball and rolling downhill instead of jumping far. This wild and isolated landscape is believed to have inspired the science fiction novel The Lost World. Looking like a barren landscape from another planet, Cappadocia covers the plateau with tens of thousands of giant mushroom-shaped rock pillars rising through the mist. To protect their shelters from invading armies, ancient people built round stone doors weighing up to 1,102 pounds, which could only be rolled into place from the inside. Hidden deep below are more than 200 underground cities, with some reaching about 279 feet deep and providing enough space for around 20,000 people and their animals. Above ground, huge folded valleys carry bands of dark red, soft pink, and white stone that look like ribbons flowing beneath the sunlight. Taking advantage of the soft volcanic rock, ancient civilizations carved deeply into the hillsides to create countless homes, churches, and monasteries directly inside the cliffs. At sunrise, the orange and red rock bands begin to glow as hundreds of hot air balloons rise at once, turning this ancient land into a surreal scene. Across the barren rocky plateau, dragon's blood trees spread crowns like giant mushrooms and release blood-red resin, making Socotra look like an alien world. On the limestone cliffs, trees with swollen, ginseng-like trunks store water and produce bright pink flowers against the grey rock. Long isolation has also allowed centipedes reaching 8 inches in length to become fearsome predators capable of attacking lizards and rats. The sea around the island remains clear for about 49 feet, but beneath its peaceful blue surface are dangerous offshore currents and traces of many ancient ships. Along the coast, enormous white sand dunes flow into the turquoise sea, while the wild land behind them remains almost untouched by concrete. However, rising temperatures are weakening the mist that supports dragons' blood trees, making young trees increasingly rare and threatening the future of this ecosystem. Stretching all the way to the horizon, Chocolate Hills is made up of 1,776 nearly identical cone-shaped hills, making the land look like a giant field of chocolate. Covering about 19 square miles, this formation developed from ancient limestone when the area was still beneath the sea around 2 million years ago. As a result, traces of coral remain inside the rock layers, even though they now form solid hills rising across the land. The soil covering the slopes is very thin, so large trees struggle to take root, leaving only low grass from the base to the top. When the dry season removes moisture from the soil, the grass changes from green to dark brown, while the rice fields and coconut forest below remain green. Under the light of sunset, the shadows of thousands of hills continue into the distance, making the landscape look like a brown sea filled with motionless waves. Tearing through the limestone core of Bikaz Gorge, the winding pass crawls along the bottom of the abyss like a giant creature, opening a breathless journey through stone mountains. The deeper you move into the crack, the thicker mountain walls swallow phone signals, making travellers feel cut off from the outside world. Your vision is constantly blocked by broken turns, while rushing water strikes the cliffs and echoes back as a heavy roar. At the narrower section, two rock walls about 984 feet high press close together, creating a real nightmare for anyone afraid of tight spaces. Even more frightening, many eroded rock blocks jut outward, hanging overhead like a giant stone roof covering the sky. In winter, water leaking from the cliffs freezes into countless sharp icicles, weighing hundreds of pounds and hanging down like monster teeth. When the tide goes out at Hashiguiawa Rocks, more than 40 stone pillars stretching nearly 2,800 feet suddenly become clear, like the trace of an ancient bridge rising from the sea floor. What makes it so intriguing is that the pillars do not stand apart randomly, but continue one after another in a clear, long line across the shallow water. Up close, visitors can see that the rock surface is not smooth at all, but covered with small holes, cracks, and sharp edges shaped by waves and wind over time. Because this structure is still affected by the sea every day, climbing is banned to prevent damage to the stone pillars that formed over a very long time. When the tide rises again, the base of the rocks disappears underwater, making the whole line of pillars look as if they are standing separately on the sea. But right beneath that water, oysters and sea anemones cling thickly to the rock bases, showing that the hidden part is actually where the most life exists. Known as the Forest of Knives, Tsingy de Bemaraha stretches across the landscape with tens of thousands of sharp limestone spikes, making the area almost impossible to cross on foot. Even its local name means where one cannot walk barefoot, serving as a warning about the countless razor-like edges. Few people would imagine that around 200 million years ago, these massive stone towers were once part of a coral reef deep beneath the ocean. Over millions of years, tropical rain carved the limestone into countless cracks, narrow canyons, and dark tunnels, creating a three-dimensional maze where people can easily lose their direction. At the top of the towers, temperatures can reach between 104 and 122 degrees Fahrenheit, while the canyon floors remain cool, damp, and covered with patches of green forest. Despite the harsh terrain, white lemurs use their thick footpads to grip and leap across the sharp stone edges that many predators struggle to cross. Once the inspiration for the floating mountains in Avatar, Tianzi Mountain appears like a forest of stone pillars rising through a sea of clouds beside the Bailong elevator, attached to a vertical cliff. Around 300 million years ago, the sandstone that forms these mountains still lay beneath the ocean before water and ice eroded it into thousands of vertical pillars. Although the cliffs contain almost no soil, ancient pine trees still root themselves in narrow cracks and stretch into the open air like bonsai trees hanging in the sky. After rainfall, thick mist covers the valley floor, making the stone peaks look like floating islands above a sea of clouds. Within this untouched landscape, the Bylong elevator is anchored to the cliff by a shaft drilled 505 feet directly into the rock. In less than 2 minutes, the glass cabin rises more than 984 feet, carrying visitors from the valley floor to the summit as the entire stone maze gradually opens below. Beneath Danakil Depression, 3 tectonic plates are slowly pulling apart, while smoking mineral pools glow yellow, orange, and neon green across the surface. This movement is thinning the Earth's crust, causing the land to sink and possibly become the floor of a new ocean in the distant future. Heat from deep underground pushes boiling acidic water to the surface, while minerals colour the pools in shades that seem almost unreal. Surrounding this strange landscape are white salt fields cracked into polygon shapes, left behind after an ancient sea completely evaporated. Deeper inside the depression, a rare lava lake continuously boils above 1,832 degrees Fahrenheit and glows bright red at night. Even more surprisingly, this land that appears almost impossible to survive in has preserved fossils around 3 million years old, revealing some of the earliest chapters in human history. Resembling a dazzling snowfield beneath the desert sun, White Desert National Park was actually formed from layers of chalk left behind by an ancient ocean. After the sea retreated, sandstorms blowing close to the ground began continuously wearing away the bases of the soft chalk formations. Over thousands of years, the bases became narrower while the tops remained large, creating countless rocks shaped like giant mushrooms and strange creatures. The landscape becomes even more unbelievable because the white chalk powder still looks like snow, although daytime temperatures can rise to 122 degrees Fahrenheit. At night, temperatures can fall close to 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and this large change gradually creates cracks across the rock surfaces. The same wind that sculpted this masterpiece continues to wear away each formation, turning the white desert into a natural work of art that is never truly finished. Looking like ribbons of sandstone melting into the darkness, Antelope Canyon is a masterpiece carved by flash floods over millions of years. Its smooth rock walls formed from ancient sand dunes that were compressed around 190 million years ago. Most unbelievably, from only about 33 feet away from the canyon's edge, the entire stone maze below almost disappears and looks like a small crack in the desert. Inside, the passage alternates between V-shaped sections with narrow floors that press against the shoulders and A-shaped sections with wider floors but tighter openings above. Light enters through the narrow gaps and reflects across the curved surfaces, changing the space from bright yellow to red, orange, and deep purple. Along the canyon floor, visitors' shoulders sometimes nearly touch both walls, making every step feel like a journey deeper into the body of a giant stone creature. Appearing like a living water staircase deep in the forest, Plitvice Lakes National Park in Croatia feels like an ecological machine carving its own shape. Thanks to its limestone filtering system, the water here is as clear as air, revealing white mineral-covered tree trunks lying more than 20 feet below. On that pure lake surface, minerals, microorganisms, and sunlight blend together, creating emerald green, turquoise, and silver grey bands like an illusion. At the bottom of some lakes, old wooden bridges and walkways still lie underwater, proving that the natural barriers keep growing and the water level quietly rises over time. Stepping deeper into the heart of this wonder, thousands of waterfall curtains pour over roots, rock edges, and green moss, creating sounds that echo through the forest. Between the dark forest, bright waterfalls, and mineral-covered trees, Plitvice Lakes feels like a place where time does not flow away, but quietly freezes into living steps of water. Before reaching the golden Buddha statue at the top of Tiger Cave Temple, climbers have to pass 1,260 steps built onto a limestone mountain about 912 feet high. The higher they climb, the narrower and steeper the stairs become, with some sections rising at up to 80 degrees, making many people grip the railing tightly to keep going. Along the way, groups of monkeys often appear near the path, forcing visitors to watch their food and belongings throughout the climb. When they reach the summit, the view opens wide with tropical forest below, white morning clouds and distant limestone mountains rising far away. What makes this place even more astonishing is that many heavy materials at the top were once pulled up by simple pulleys and human strength over many years. After all those challenges, visitors can place ultra-thin gold leaves on a sacred footprint, turning the climb into both a physical and spiritual experience. Throwing away the familiar image of dark underground stone caves, the Ebon Ice Caves are actually a giant curtain of ice hanging in front of a cliff inside an American forest. When you step inside, the ground is not dirt or rock, but a slanted layer of ice as hard and slippery as steel, making people without ice cleats easy to fall. From the hollow space behind the ice curtain, the large ice columns cut the sunlight into striped streaks, making the scene feel like a brilliantly glowing crystal prison. This icy wall forms when water leaking from the cliff freezes in mid-air, stacking into cold spears that bite down toward the ground like monster teeth. In temperatures around 5 to -4 degrees Fahrenheit, every deep breath can feel dry and painful, as if the freezing air is scraping the lungs. But the strangest thing is that this threatening ice fortress only exists by season, then melts into muddy water and disappears when spring arrives. Unlike the familiar image of flowing lava, Dalalol lies 426 feet below sea level, yet is covered with neon-coloured mineral deposits. Boiling mud and crystallized salt intertwine like a coral reef on land, bordered by crystal steps as fragile as glass. Rising from the terrain are countless mineral chimneys, formed when hot gases carrying sulfur and salt escape upward and settle on the surface. Hidden beneath turquoise and yellow pools are acid lakes with a pH close to 0, strong enough to corrode almost anything that falls inside. Traces of human activity remain across this landscape, where cracked salt layers were once carved into blocks and used as currency in trade. Even today, escaping gas whistles through the cracks while shrinking salt produces sharp, crackling sounds, making Dalol seem as though it never stops changing. Lake Baikal reaches a depth of 5,387 feet and holds nearly 1/4 of Earth's unfrozen surface fresh water among snow-covered mountains. During summer, microorganisms continuously filter the water, allowing visibility to reach nearly 131 feet and making boats appear to float in the air. When winter arrives, the lake freezes and cracks, pushing blue sheets of ice above the surface under the sunlight. Just beneath the ice, methane rising from the lake bed becomes trapped, creating millions of white bubbles stacked in layers. Although the ice can support trucks weighing several tons, warmer currents below slowly weaken it, and vehicles may fall through if they leave the tested route. Even while the lake remains completely covered, sunlight still passes through the ice, allowing moss and algae to continue photosynthesis and sustain life throughout the winter. Cutting across the horizon like a living fortress wall, Perito Moreno Glacier in Argentina rises from the water with a cold beauty that almost feels unreal. Covering about 97 square miles, the ice mass reflects a magical sapphire blue colour because its layers have been tightly compressed over thousands of years. The front wall rises about 243 feet above the water, while the hidden part below reaches down about 558 feet like giant frozen roots. It quietly moves forward and blocks the flow, forming a natural dam that can push the two lake levels apart by about 98 feet. Feet. Although it gives off a bone-chilling cold, the water beside the ice wall does not freeze completely because constant cracking and friction keeps stirring the boundary between ice and water. Meltwater from the glacier's core is almost colourless and crystal clear, but its freezing chill still makes this place feel like an icy world beyond imagination. Hidden inside an almost invisible canyon along the Italian coast, this tiny beach feels like a secret world completely blocked from view out on the vast ocean. Right above it, a stone arch bridge about 98 feet high stretches across the empty space, accidentally framing the narrow sky into a perfect picture. Because the two vertical cliffs press so close together, the bottom of the gorge is almost trapped in darkness and only receives direct sunlight for about 2 to 3 hours around noon. This V-shaped structure looks like a violent slash, cutting the limestone mountain range in half, making the whole space feel suffocated and visually compressed. In sharp contrast to the cold darkness of the cliffs, the salty water flowing into the narrow crack glows with a calm and magical emerald colour. To touch that green water, visitors must pass a harsh physical test, carefully stepping down thousands of twisted stone stairs right beside the edge of the abyss. Welcoming you is a surreal world that once sank deep beneath the ocean about 230 million years ago, now rising into giant, rough conglomerate rocks. Hidden inside this wild natural masterpiece is an ancient military fortress with unstable walls squeezed tightly between sharp stone peaks. The whole cliff face seems to burn with a deep red colour because the iron inside the rock core has rusted, creating a powerful contrast with the dark green conifer forest around it. The barren red colour and strange beauty of this rock complex have turned it into a perfect setting for science fiction films about the surface of Mars. The scenery becomes even more magical on autumn mornings when a sea of fog swallows the valley and leaves the stone peaks hanging like drifting ghost islands. To complete this almost invincible stronghold, ancient people cleverly used the 230-foot cliff as an eternal natural shield on three sides.